Hi there, and thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at lesson 14.3, the Pythagorean Theorem. In today's notes, we're going to be writing down 7 things, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we want to make sure we know is what a right triangle looks like, because the Pythagorean Theorem relates directly to right triangles. You need to make sure that you understand the legs are touching the right angle always, and those are going to be labeled with A and B. The hypotenuse, that's always the longest side, and it's always across from the right triangle. So what we're going to do is go ahead and pause the video here, and I want you to label the triangle that is written for you, and once you're done, click play to see some other information. So number 2 in your notes, you're actually going to copy down. This is the Pythagorean Theorem. The Pythagorean Theorem is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, and that just means if this is correct, it is a true right triangle. Again, remember that A and B are the ones that are going to be touching the right angle. So A could be here and B could be there, or they could be switched around just as long as they're the only two sides touching the right angle. And then remember that C, or the hypotenuse, is always across from the right angle, and that's always going to be your longest side. Go ahead and take time now to pause the video here to make sure that you have the Pythagorean Theorem written down, and then once you're done, click play so we can try some questions. So this first one, you're just going to watch how it's done. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Then I need to figure out what's a, b, and c. Notice how c is the one that's missing. It's also the hypotenuse away from the right angle, which means that the numbers touching the right angle are going to be a and b. Okay? I'm going to say for this one, 12 is a and 5 is b. It doesn't really matter, just as long as they're touching the right angle. One of them is an A, one of them is a B. A squared, I'm going to write as 12 squared. B squared, I'm going to write as 5 squared. So all I'm doing is just plugging in what I've got here. And then C squared is still a mystery. I know 12 squared is 12 times 12, which is 144. And 5 squared is 5 times 5, which is 25. And then I'll just add these two together. 144 plus 25 is going to give me 169, and that's equal to c squared. In order to get c just by itself, not a squared, whatever, I'm going to have to undo the square by finding the square root. So I'm basically finding the square root of both sides. The square root of c squared is just c, and the square root of 169 is 13. So my answer for this example is 13 meters. Here's your next example that you're going to try in your notes. Again, you're going to start by writing down the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Go ahead and pause the video, try it, and then once you're done, click play to check your work. Okay, so I said a was 6 and b was 8. So a squared is 6 squared, b squared is 8 squared, and c squared is a mystery. I know 6 squared is 36, that's 6 times 6. 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64. All that's equal to c squared. 36 plus 64 is 100, and 100 is equal to c squared. All I have to do now is just find the square root of each one. The square root of c squared is c, and the square root of 100 is 10. So my answer for number 3 is 10 centimeters. Here's another one that you can try. Let's go ahead and pause the video again. Again, start off by writing down your Pythagorean theorem. And once you're done, click play to check your work. Go ahead and pause now. Okay, in this one I said A was 8 and B was 15 because they're both touching that right angle. So I'm going to say 8 squared plus 15 squared is equal to c squared. 8 squared is 64. 15 squared is 225. 64 plus 225 is 289, and that's equal to c squared. Again, I just find the square root of 289, and that's going to give me 17 feet. Okay? This next one is a little bit interesting. It is still done the same way. I am going to go ahead and give you time to try it. It's still with the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, except now you have fractions, okay? Just make sure that your final answer is simplified. Go ahead and take time now to pause the video here, try it, and once you're done, click play. Alright, for this one, I said A was 2/5 and B was 3/10. So we're doing 2/5 squared plus 3/10 squared is equal to C squared. I know 2/5 times 2/5 is 4 25ths, and 3/10 times 3/10 is 9 100ths. Okay. Before I add them, I do need to have a common denominator. So what I'm going to do is change both of these to have a denominator of 100. That's going to change 4 25ths to 16 hundredths plus 9 hundredths equals C squared. And then 16 plus 9, I can add that together now since I have a common denominator. That's going to be 25 over 100. And now all I have to do is just find the square root. So the square root of 25 over 100 is 5 over 10, or 1/2, as I simplified. Okay, so 1/2 is my final answer. A lot of the times people just stop here. You don't stop here. You got to keep going to find your square root. Okay. The next little piece is whenever you're missing another length of the triangle other than C. Okay, in this one you're missing letter A. You're still going to start off the same way. A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared, but this time A will be the mystery. Okay, so you are going to try this one by yourself. Let's go ahead and pause the video here to see if you can solve for A, and once you're done, click play to check your work. Alright, since A is the mystery, I know that 4 will be B and 5 will be C. Remember, C is always across from the right angle. So A squared plus 4 squared is equal to 5 squared. A squared still remains the mystery. 4 squared is 16 and 5 squared is 25. In order to get 16 away from A, I'm going to have to do the opposite operation, which would be subtracting. These two cancel out, so I'll have A squared is equal to 9. And then all I have to do now is just find the square root of each one. The square root of A squared is A, and the square root of 9 is 3. So my answer for number 6 should be 3 inches. The last one in number 10, you're solving for B this time. Again, I would start off by writing your Pythagorean theorem, filling in what you know, and then solving for the missing piece. Let's go ahead and pause the video now so you can try 7 on your own, and once you're done, click play. Alright, so A is going to be 6 in this one, B is unknown, and 10 is C. Again, the reason why we choose 10 as C is because it's going to be across from the right angle, and because it's the longest measurement. So A squared would be 6 squared, B squared is unknown, and C squared is 10 squared. And now 6 squared is 36, plus B squared is equal to 100. And then I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides, because that's the opposite of a regular 36. So B squared is equal to 64. Take the square root of both of these. The square root of 64 is 8. So my answer here will be 8 yards. Okay? That's all we have for notes today. So basically what you talked about was the Pythagorean theorem, A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared, and learned how to solve for each. Thanks so much for tuning in.